with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everyone. All right, if we can do the roll call, please, Suzette.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mrs. Kaiser.
Here.
Mr. Sikich.
Present.
Mr. Schultz.
Present.
Mrs. Justa. She's present. Mr. Keller.
Here.
Mr. Ustra.
Here.
Ms. Klug.
Here.
President Emmett.
Here. Proper notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the open meeting laws of the state of Wisconsin. Do we have any changes or modifications to tonight's agenda?
I have no changes.
All right, we will move on to item 6, our public comments for the evening. If you are planning to participate in public comments via the remote meeting, if you could please list your name in the chat so that we can make sure that we call everybody who wants to participate. The chat is located along the bottom of the Zoom meeting, or there might be 3 dots that are available as well that would open up into like a more section, and the chat would be there. So if you could please, I did put a comment into the chat group so that if you would like to participate in public comments, if you could list your names, we make sure that we grab everybody who wants to participate. All public comments, you have 3 minutes to address the board. As a reminder, the board does not engage, debate, or reply during the board meeting, but rather a response will be submitted to you before the next Board of Education meeting in July. At this point, we just have the one so far who is listed. So Sarah Garcia, you are up.
All right. Remind me, do I need to just
your name and address? Yep, your name and address. Thanks, Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you can hear me good?
Absolutely.
Okay, Sarah Garcia, 13190 West Howard Avenue, New Berlin, Wisconsin, 53151. Okay, so I am Sarah Garcia. I am the PTA president at Hoover and a very concerned parent. I am wondering if the district is doing the exit interviews for the teachers. There were 5 and principal that are leaving from Hoover. I'd like to know what we are doing to try to maintain teachers, because as sad as it is, we, the UW or the WAWM school district, seems to be a stepping stone school district. I believe we are one of the greatest school districts, and it was proven to me, especially after we were up and running in 72 hours for online learning for 11 weeks with no prior training. These teachers did amazing along with the whole school district, and I think it's important to keep these amazing teachers here. I understand life and circumstances change things, but I am concerned for Hoover. Some questions that I have are, when will the principal interviews be happening? Has there been an interview board determined yet? My worry is Mr. Elliott has been so amazing and came in August 3 years ago and took 3 to 4 months to get used to what was needed from him. And I don't want to see someone else struggle the way he did. However, he did an amazing job. My next couple questions are, when will the teacher interviews be happening? Will Mr. Elliott be helping determine who is going to be hired? And since he's leaving at the end of June, will the new principal be hiring then? Who's conducting the exit interviews for our teachers? Is the response a financial strain? Is it administration? When is the hiring freeze going to be lifted? I'm worried we won't be able to hire the 5 teachers that we lost because of the hiring freeze and the fact that the jobs aren't even posted on WeCan yet. We knew about 5 openings at the end of school 2 weeks ago. I hope you guys can see my concern, as even though the school year has just ended, the time coming to fall will go very quickly, and I want to make sure that we build our staff before September 1st. Hoover is a very strong community, and we just want a great leader to come support our school as Mr. Elliott did, along with all the great teachers that not only Hoover, but our entire school district of West Allis has. So I'm hoping that I get a little bit more in-depth response than I did from Dr. Lexman when I sent the email regarding this last week. Thank you.
Thank you. If anybody else would like to participate in public comments, if you could please list your name in the chat. I don't have any other comments. Anybody else registered to speak for public comments? Is there anybody else that still wants to participate? Okay, then we will move on to item 7, the superintendent's report. Dr. Lexman.
Sorry, still muted. Thank you. Start with 7.1, the legislative update. And so a little bit of information from this. Now $80 million in COVID-19 financial assistance to K-12 schools and higher education institutions. So on June 18, 2020, Governor Tony Evers announced more than $46 million to K-12 schools and $37 million to higher education partners to assist with the challenges faced relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. The $46.6 million for K-12 schools will come from the governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, established under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, which was a federal act, and will prioritize students in districts that have the highest remote learning needs and have been the most significantly affected by COVID-19 pandemic. The $37 million for higher education institutions will be distributed out of funding provided directly to Wisconsin under the CARES Act and can be used to reimburse necessary unbudgeted expenditures made in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The governor's $80 million allocation toward K-12 schools and higher education institutions is in addition to more than $354 million that K-12 schools and higher education institutions already received directly through the CARES Act. So this is good news for us. We don't know what our particular allocation will be just yet. We're waiting for that information, but all of this helps during the challenges that we'll face in the coming years related to the economic impact of COVID-19. And then I will move on to 7.2, district recognitions. So first, today we're really doing some shout outs to our staff that really have helped support not only the really effective transition to learning from home or online learning, but also to really continue that on through the end of the school year. So during our move to online learning, it really is instructional services help teachers and students embrace a new way of teaching and learning. They provided group collaboration, planning, and individualized support for passion projects at every grade level, and did all of this, online, like the way we're meeting today. So we want to give shout outs to Adam Hengel, Chris Miller, Steve Carr, Diane Lazaridis, Chris Gostomsky, Andrea Watkins, and Deidre Raymer, a director of leadership and learning, for helping us coordinate the learning side of this. And then in our technology department, due to our move to online learning, our technology department ran a help desk to support teachers and students. And this is a little bit of what was in the background that maybe wasn't so evident to parents, but that we launched new email addresses specifically for help desks for technology, for learning. And then there was one internal one for employees just around human resources issues that pop up as our working environment changed. And it was Brandon and Tim Byron that distributed over 200 devices to students, meaning they went out that needed them after schools had closed. And now these employees have cleaned and disinfected over 7,500 student devices. They've been re-imaged nearly all of the 600 teacher devices in record time. We're getting devices back to teachers, especially those that are teaching summer school. So we want to recognize this department and thank them for their expertise and dedication to our learners. And that's Brian Heisler, Kevin Clark, Brandon Shumich, Karen Johnson, Tim Byron, Dan Emonson, Jannard Haywood, Julietta O'Brien, Mike Thurn, Sandy Klein, and of course our manager, Frone Tenuta. So a big appreciation for all the work that they put into where we are now and the work that will come as we develop our plan for the coming school year. And then 7.3, some updates and information items for me. Really quickly, I'll touch on some of the graduation planning continues. We are moving forward with our plan on July 11th, and that's been after our last meeting. We've communicated that to families of our graduates. And I recognize there's a lot of frustration with this. And as I've talked through this, there's no way to get this decision absolutely right. That is one of the realities of so much of what we face right now. But we feel that this is the appropriate direction. And one of the areas of criticism that has shown up, and I think it's fair criticism in particular of me, from parents, that it seems like I made the decision all alone. And I want to take the moment in an update just to respond to that a little bit. Because it's been lots and lots hours of conversations with directors to try to figure out what is the right path. It's also been lots of consultation with principals. I meet weekly with our immediate neighboring superintendents, and so a lot of decision or guidance and discussion there. I've also, talked through this with the West Allis Health Commissioner, and again, I'm leaning on the West Allis Health Department because that's where the majority of our families live, and that's where the majority of our schools are located. It's not to suggest that the other health departments aren't equally important, but in trying to move forward with decisions and guidance, I think it'll be impossible to consult with 4 health departments and two different county health departments. So we're leaning heavily on West Allis Health Department, and they've supported the direction we've taken for our graduation ceremonies. But I also think it's worth stating publicly that the authority around the making decisions about the supervision of graduation is actually included in board policy and rule. And I'll be honest, it wasn't until we started moving in this direction to try to figure out how we were going to respond to our graduation expectations that I really looked carefully at part of the rule. And it's very clear that the board has created the expectation that the district administrator shall be responsible for the supervision of graduation. So that puts the responsibility back on me. And again, I haven't done this alone. And it may appear that way, but it's been entirely appropriate given the consultation and what's currently in board policy. So we're actually, looking forward to move forward with this. Again, recognizing the frustration, but we think all of the pieces that we put in place will make this a really unique and special graduation, very different than others, but unique in its own right. So I just wanted to respond to some of that. Then a couple other things. Sarah Garcia. So my notes include a couple of the answers you were looking for. So we've actually started the first round interviews for both the Hoover and the West Milwaukee Intermediate School principalship today. We spent 7 hours conducting first round interviews. We have another 7-8 hours worth of interviews scheduled for tomorrow. And the reason I said first round is that the process we use is in the first round for leadership positions like this. The first round is myself and directors, and our job is out of the applicant pool to identify anyone we feel we would be proud to support as a new principal at Hoover, a new principal at West, right? And out of the pool, we're interviewing numerous individuals, and our job is to send forward only those we really feel we would be proud to support. And that may be 3, 4, or 5 candidates that go to Hoover and go to West Milwaukee for the second round interviews. And it really is the second round decision making that's most critical in this. We're sending forward anybody we believe would make an effective principal, anybody we would believe we'd be proud to support. But the school-based team, which consists of parents and teachers and almost always the head secretary, because that's a very important relationship in a school building, and sometimes even custodians are part of that process. And the job of the second round interview is to really identify, of the 3, 4, 5 applicants we send forward, who's the right person for that particular learning community. I don't work at Hoover or West every day. I'm in the schools, or was in the schools a lot. But I think it's important that the local team decides who's right. The other option the local team has, they could say, we don't think any of the 3 or 4 that we send forward are right. And that puts it back on us to start over. And that has happened. Not often, but it has happened. And we respect the decision-making at the local level to figure out who's the right principal for that particular school. And so in terms of how parents get involved in that process, is we have a survey that's gone out. And it's a little different in the past than when we were able to meet face-to-face, but it still is asking parents and all employees at those schools to identify the most important characteristics they think they need in the next leader. And so we've been collecting that survey information. And there's also, what's different this time is not only a comment box, which has always been there, but then also, are you interested in being on the interview panel? And so from that, we'll identify the parents and teachers that are going to be part of that process. And we try to identify for parents and teachers, individuals that represent different perspectives about the school. So for example, a teacher that's a core classroom teacher, a teacher that's a specialist in art or music or phy ed, And almost always we look for a special educator. So that we have those, and the same with parents, that we look for parents to be on the panel that maybe have different perspectives based on their experience with their kids in our schools. So that's how that process is moving forward, and that's a little more detail than I normally shared, but given Sarah's interest, I thought I'd just expand that a little bit. And then finally, as we start to pivot towards the work of getting ready for next year, so DPI and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services released their guidance today on ideas for reopening schools. We've got a whole bunch of people reviewing it. It's 83 pages, a lot of it charts and flow charts and those kind of things. But we're using that to prepare a survey for parents, which will be the first one we do. So we're using the guidance and the three different types of kind of learning experiences. Which would be in person with some kids, virtual, all virtual, or kind of hybrid models. And we're going to look to parents to give feedback about these things and then start moving down the path with our planning team based on the parent feedback. So I'm encouraging parents to watch for that survey because it's going to be a fairly quick turnaround because we need to start making decisions. And I want to make it clear that no decisions have been made at this time about exactly what we're going to do. We believe that there is some general consensus across the state and school districts that there will be some form of face-to-face school in the fall. It's going to vary greatly from district to district. And it's also important to say that no decisions have been made, but also any plan we make could change at any moment given the situation with COVID-19 locally. So if there's a spike in infection rates and hospitalizations and or deaths, we anticipate that there will be new orders to close schools. And so I think it's important that we keep people aware of that, and we're planning for that. That if we have the majority of our kids are face-to-face using protective measures, and all of a sudden we're told a school or an entire school district has to close, part of our plan will be how we pivot back to learning from home until we're told things are good to go back into buildings. So that was a lot as an update, but that's where we are at this point in the work. And so that concludes the superintendent's report.
Great, thank you very much. All right, we move on to item 8, the board president's report, taking a look at the board calendar. So tonight is June 22nd, and at 5:30 we had a closed session meeting, and at 6 o'clock now we've got our regular Board of Education meeting, including the approval of the proposed 2020-2021 budget and preliminary tax levy. That'll happen in a little bit. Next meeting is July 13th, Monday at 6 p.m., a regular Board of Education meeting. Following that, on July 20th, starting at 6 p.m., we will be doing a walkthrough of the Recreation Center and the expansion there at 2450 South 68th Street. And then immediately following that, we will be doing a workshop, which will be at the Recreation Center about as Dr. Lexman just said, the first draft of what reopening schools is going to look like up to that moment. So again, knowing that that's just a draft. And then following that, on July 27th, starting at 6 p.m., we do have a regular Board of Education meeting. Do any board members have any updates? All right. We will then move on to our consent agenda for the evening. There are 4 items on the consent agenda. Item 9.1, the approval of minutes from the June 8th, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting and the June 15th, 2020 workshop meeting. Item 9.2, the employment summary. Item 9.3, the supplementary contracts. And item 9.4, the financial summary. Does anyone need anything separated? If not, we would look for a motion.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, great, thank you. All right, we'll then move on to our action items for this evening. Item 10.1, the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance membership. Dr. Lexman.
Yeah, so this is an item that the board sees annually. So we're a participant in the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance, which is almost all of the districts in southeastern Wisconsin, and it has served up until the COVID-19 moment as really the way the collective school districts seek to influence legislation that are in the best interest of our districts and our kids. And it's part of the work of school districts and school boards is to be engaged in the political process that makes decisions about school funding and about how open enrollment works and how school choice works. And so SWSA helps us and supports us in that work. As we've shifted to learning from home and the reality of what's happening around school funding, SWSA has been really helpful. They have a really great kind of collection of some of the best resources from the state and around the country about how schools and districts are responding to the new landscape. And so, with the board support, we'd like to continue that relationship.
Questions or comments? Now we'd look for a motion.
Move to approve membership.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, that passes. Great. Item 10.2, the Expulsion Independent Hearing Officer Resolution. Dr. Lexman.
Thank you. Also on an annual item. And so the way we respond to recommendations for expulsion from our principals is through a process that includes an independent hearing officer. So we hire an attorney that facilitates the process and then makes a recommendation to the board. That's been a process we've been using for a number of years. It seems to be working well for us to have expertise at the hearing and procedural level. Seems to be serving us well. And I want to take the opportunity to point out that our expulsions have been going down and this year quite significantly. So there's been many fewer, which we're pleased with. Some of that is due to schools not being open from March till the beginning of June. But the trend was down, and so we think that's encouraging. That really has nothing to do with the item that's in front of you, but I think it is worth noting. And so here too, with the board support, we'd like to continue that relationship and continuing with that process when and if we need to respond to student expulsion recommendations.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions? Not all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we'll continue down that path. Wonderful. Okay, item 10.3, the 2020-2021 District Property Liability and Workers' Compensation Insurance.
Alrighty. So this one is also an annual item. So each May we receive a proposal for our property liability and workers' comp insurance. This year we gathered 2 quotes. So our current broker is M3. So we received a quote from M3 and also one from Marsh and McLennan Agency, or MMA. And after a review of both proposals, the MMA proposal, so the new agency, offered a more robust coverage plan for a more reasonable rate. So for those reasons, we're recommending that MMA is our new agent for those insurance coverages. And just a couple notes to dig in a little bit on some of those coverages is that the workers' comp portion of this giant liability package is over half of that dollar total. So it makes up a large portion, and we have had a pretty high loss ratio and experience mod, which those are factors that come into play in terms of the dollar amount that we pay in the premiums. So MMA has programs that assist our district in lowering that mod and putting better practices into place to make our workplace safer, so we can lower that workers' comp insurance premium. And then another thing I wanted to mention too is that the new proposal also offers a more robust coverage for cyber, which is really recommended, especially as we're in this online world these days. And we just have a greater exposure for losses in many regards, with our students learning online, our teachers teaching online, and most of us still working from home. So this new proposal provides us with a more robust coverage for property insurance, general liability, and workers' comp.
So a proposal that matches the needs of where our district is currently going and is.
Yep, exactly. And kind of a plus is that it was about $50,000, a little bit under $50,000 cheaper than our proposal from our current broker. So it's significant enough to make the change.
Wonderful. Questions or comments for Caitlin? If not, we'd look for a motion.
I have a question.
Christine, go ahead.
Just wanted to point out on page 79, line 21, the address for Franklin Fieldhouse has an extra 8 in there. It should be 86th Street, not 886 Street or 886th Street.
Thanks. We'll have that.
Yeah, with the coverage on things we actually own, right? Any other comments or questions? We had a motion and a second. Correct? Noah, Brian, we had a motion and a second.
I actually was pointing to Christine, so I
Oh,
will
okay.
be either the motion or the second.
Nope, that's
Yeah, I
fine.
didn't either.
Everything was saying at the same time. So, okay. Comments or questions? Okay, now we look for a motion.
So moved.
Kristen, are you the second?
Sure.
Moved and seconded. Any remaining questions or comments?
Good catch, Christine.
Yeah. Any, okay, so we've got that. We've got motion second, no more questions and comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you very much. We will go on to our next item, item 10.4, the approval of the 2020-2021 preliminary budget and tax levy. Ms. Woodler.
Alrighty, thank you. So this one, again, is an annual item that we do prior to 7/1, which is when our new fiscal year starts. So this is the same information we talked through thoroughly at our last board meeting and in our last finance committee meeting. So this is there's been no changes since the workshop that we had 2 weeks ago. And with this proposed prelim budget for 2021, our tax levy would be $38,256,501 with the projected mill rate of $8.35. And again, these numbers are very likely to change, will change prior to the board approving our final budget at the end of October.
Noah?
I also want to note that the money that Dr. Lexman mentioned, the 80 million that's going to be split out of the 46.6, that money isn't here at all either. So that would hopefully help with the deficit that we're looking at right now.
Yep.
Marty?
Yeah, what I want to note is that this also kind of goes back to some of Sarah's comments when the hiring freeze or what we paused is going to end. What's included in the budget, and even though it's currently in deficit, we think there are strategies that'll bring us into balance by the time we get to October. But what's included are all of the teacher positions that we paused on before we kind of felt the landscape at least stop shifting too much on the budget front. And so with approval, I just want to be clear with the board, we're going to start moving forward with those. What is becoming clear in the hypothetical planning that lots of superintendents, we talk to each other about what next year will look like, that if there's to be any kind of district-wide or even school-wide social distancing, it's going to take more adults, not fewer. Because if we're going to have to social distance, what used to be 24 kids, then now we're going to be 10 kids and the other 14 kids have to be in a different space. Well, that takes 2 adults. And so we think it's wise for us to at least hire the teachers we know we need under normal circumstances and then see where we are. So I just wanted to point that out so the board understands what you're approving and the way we're going to interpret it.
Yep. So we met as a team to review all the positions that are open, and those that are going to be posted will be posted tomorrow. And just a note on the going off of what Marty said was that 2 of the reasons why we enacted the hiring pause was because we weren't sure what the budget effects were going to be or what school would look like next year. So now we have, not that we know what school is going to look like, but we know some of the options, and we know that it very likely will require more adults and not fewer. And in terms of the timing and the budget effects of COVID, we now hear that we probably won't have a budget repair bill until sometime between November and February, which our final budget will be long approved by then. So we can't wait until then to make decisions on staffing. And also we're looking now like we're going to be affecting categorical aid versus the per pupil increase or decrease that we have budgeted in the prelim budget. But we don't have any idea on what that dollar amount will be in the per pupil categorical aid. Therefore, we kept our assumption of a $50 decrease inside the revenue limit because that's the best guidance that we have at this time.
Thank you for taking a more conservative approach. I think that will wind up being in our best interest in the long run and try to prevent as many surprises as possible. So thank you for that approach and that continuation of that thinking, because that will probably ultimately give us the best chance of success. Any questions or comments for Caitlin? Noah?
I just wanted to kind of reiterate more than what Caitlin said regarding how much we expect this to change between this budget that we're passing now and what the final budget will actually look like. For those who are concerned about the fact that it is a deficit budget, it's with the understanding that there's a lot of stuff that's going to change between now and even August 1st that will give us a clearer picture about what's going to be happening next year.
Probably a lot between now and July 1st that'll change.
This budget is in jello, as we like to say, or in flux. So we just have to approve it. So we have to approve a prelim budget before the fiscal year starts. And that's why we do this, even though there are so many unknowns at this point.
And Caitlin, there is precedence where we've approved a preliminary budget that was in deficit, correct?
Yes, good point. Yep, our last, at least I've looked back at least 3 or 4 years, we've approved a deficit budget for the preliminary budget in June. So it's certainly not unheard of.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Caitlin?
Has the state given any indication when they might have a better idea of what the allocation is going to be?
I haven't heard anything except for the 46.6. So that's all I have at this point.
Okay.
Anything else?
I move to approve the budget, preliminary budget.
Moved and seconded. Yep, moved and seconded. Any additional comments or questions?
I think Caitlin wins MVP today.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes. Thank you for the work on that. Okay, that's the last item on our agenda. We would just look for a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any additional comments? Anybody else want to stick around? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you all for your hard work. Thank you for keeping each other safe and keeping your family safe.
Caitlin, thank you for all your hard work.
You're killing it, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.